So lately I have been reading the book of Job. And when I told Isabel that I was going to do a video on Job, you said what, Isabel?
Job is very confusing.
Why do you think Job is confusing?
He talks in riddles, and the whole book's about him and his friends talking about, I don't know.
She's not wrong. Job can be kind of confusing, just like all of the other books of the Bible can be confusing if you don't fully understand. So, one of the reasons I like the book of Job is that when I'm struggling with something, I tend to go to Job to try to make sense of it when I don't fully understand why something is happening.
That doesn't make sense. The book's already confusing.
Okay, but I understand the Bible enough to interpret it enough to understand it. Do you understand?
Yeah.
When I first read the Bible, I didn't quite understand it either. It takes a lot of practice and a lot of learning.
You've read it like 3 times thoroughly.
That's true. I have read it cover to cover probably like 2 or 3 times. But now I just kind of go with what I need at that moment in time. So what do you know about the book of Job? What do you know about Job in particular? What happened to him?
Well, the devil thought, God said that if someone has faith in him, that he might be able to, it might help him to not struggle with what's going on. And so the devil tested, and God said he can test Job and take everything away, but he must not hurt him.
Yep. So at that point in the story, Satan took away Job's kids. He took away his workers. Nope, his wife. He still kept had his wife throughout the whole thing. And then eventually, Job was still, throughout all of this, Job was still faithful to God. So then Satan was like, you know what? That's because you kept his life. You didn't do anything with him, him and his body. So God was like, okay, do what you want, but spare his life. Don't kill him. So then he ended up hurting. He had all these leprosy, boils all over, and he was just in a lot of pain.
It must get really hurt.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I can't even imagine. I mean, he was already going through emotional wreck. I mean, you could probably lose all that stuff, but losing your children, I can't even imagine, Isabel.
He had lots of sheep and goats too.
Yeah, that's right. He did lose a lot of his animals. That's true. The book of Job has a lot to do with Job trying to contemplate why all these bad things are happening in his life. And he struggles a lot with it. And just to give you kind of a backstory, in Job's time, most people felt that if bad things happened, it automatically assumed that you sin against God. So Job thought this, and he really struggled with this, and you can kind of tell throughout the book that he's really struggling with what he did wrong and why God would make all these bad things happen. And even in chapter 3, he kind of thinks he should have died at birth, that he would rather die at his birth and not go through life, because that would mean he would never sin against God.
But that's not true.
No, but he felt that way. Like, you don't want to sin against God, and he felt so guilty over it because he was a very righteous person. Like, in the book, the beginning of the book, it talks about how he would pray for anybody. He'd pray for his kids at the beginning of the day just in case they fell away from God.
Do you do that?
I do. I admit I don't do it every single morning, but I do throughout the day. I do pray for you guys a lot.
Yay!
So, as you start reading the book, he has these conversations between him and his family and his friends, and you kind of start noticing that his way of thinking changes. He starts realizing he actually didn't do anything wrong, which was a big,
deal.
Yes, thank you, Lucas. It was an absolute big deal. And he decides that he didn't do anything wrong and that it didn't really matter what anybody said. I think that is something that we need to do too. When bad things happen, we need to decide why they're happening and what we can take from it. What do you think that, Isabel? Would you like to read a verse for me? All right, I already have it open to the page. I want you to read 2 Corinthians 13:5.
Ooh, that's a good one. I read the whole thing. Corinthians. Had to memorize part of it too from my school.
Okay. You know this. So do you know this verse by heart? If you can memorize it. Okay, go ahead.
Examine yourselves to see whether you are in faith. Test yourselves. Do you not realize that Jesus Christ is in you? Unless, of course, you failed the test.
So this is exactly what Job was doing. He was trying to think about all of his actions. He was trying to figure out what he did wrong and what he could take from it. He asked for advice. I mean, he talked to so many people, and they all were basically telling him that he sinned against God. And
No one stood up for his beliefs.
well, at the beginning, Job felt the same way they did. He didn't understand why all this was happening.
So he stood up for his beliefs.
Yep. And so that's the same thing we need to do. When something's going on in our life, when bad things are happening, we need to decide, we need to think about our actions. We need to decide, did we sin against God? Which is something we honestly should probably do all the time, shouldn't we, Isabel? We should also ask for advice and seek counsel. Just like you do sometimes with me and your dad. You come to us and you ask for help a lot. And you ask for us, well, why does I not always feel that God's with me? That's one of your main things you talk about a lot, don't you? We need to pray, don't we? The biggest thing is we always need to try to figure out what we can take away from what happened. Now, sometimes bad things happen, and in Job's case, it wasn't anything to do with anything he did wrong, and sometimes that's going to happen with us too, right? Bad things just happen around us, and sometimes those bad things affect us. And that happened. Do you ever feel that way, Luke, Isabel?
Mm-hmm.
Do you ever wonder why things happen? Mm-hmm. And sometimes we don't always understand God's reason why God does things. But we need to ask God, right?
Yeah, we need to ask him if we have trouble.
Yeah. We need to ask for his help, don't we? And then we need to figure out what we can take away from anything. Because even if things aren't our fault, and we can still learn something from it. Is there anything you would like to add or ask questions?
Yes. Is it about me?
It is not about you, Lucas.
If you find Job confusing like I did, go to someone you're with, like Mommy.
Yeah, so I wasn't going to have her in this video. I was just going to do it myself. But when she talked about how Job was confusing to her, I thought she might be helpful to other people. So absolutely. So as Isabel said, when you're really struggling with something, ask for help.
Yes.
There'll be videos that will be coming up that I will kind of show you some ways to kind of help you interpret the Bible a little bit more and to understand the Bible. So be ready for those videos.
Interpret with Mommy.
Sure. Ding! Would you like to end us in prayer?
Yes. Now please bow your heads and close your eyes. Dear Lord Jesus, thank you for this wonderful knowledge that we have, and thank you for your word that we can study from. And please help us if we have any trouble to go to you. And for everything that's been going on that's bad, please help us to know that you're always with us and we can always go to you whenever we feel like we need to. Amen.
Isabel, thank you a lot for your help today.
Yep.